Summary and Analysis. 3 Questions by one of the greatest Russian writers, Leo Tolstoy, is a remarkable piece of literature that teaches us a significant life lesson that is relevant even today. This particular short story features in Tolstoy's short story collection, What Men Live By and Other Tales. The story has been written in the form of a parable, and its teachings have survived the very test of time. 3 Questions begins at a point when a certain Tsar, the Russian term for an emperor, wondered how he could attain success if only he knew the answers to 3 questions. Firstly, what was the right time to perform an action? Secondly, who were the right people to interact with? And thirdly, what would be the right action that would bring him success? The Tsar believed that if he would get the appropriate answers to these 3 questions, then he would remain invincible. He thus proclaimed throughout the country that whoever would give him the correct and satisfactory answer would be duly rewarded. Learned men from all over flocked to the Tsar's court, and all their answers varied. The Tsar was, however, not satisfied with any of the answers. Then someone suggested that the Tsar may consider visiting a hermit who lived in the woods and was famous for his wisdom. But that wise man met only simple and common people and never ventured out of the woods. The king therefore put on simple clothes, and leaving his bodyguards behind, he entered the forest and reached the hermit's cottage. He found the latter digging the ground in front of his hut. The hermit, on seeing the Tsar, greeted him and continued with his digging. He was a weak and frail-looking man. The king went up to him and told him the purpose of his visit, that he needed answers to 3 questions about the right time, the right person, and the right action. But surprisingly, the hermit did not answer. Instead, he continued with his digging. The Tsar understood that the hermit must be tired, and seeing the weak and frail man, the king took pity on him and offered to help him. The Tsar took the spade and dug 2 beds and then again repeated his questions. The hermit maintained his silence and said, "Now rest a while and let me work a bit." The king refused and continued with his work. The sunset time gradually approached. The Tsar grew impatient and told the hermit politely that if the latter would not provide answers to his questions, then the king would not wait any longer and must return to the palace. Right at that moment, a bearded man came running. He was severely wounded, and as he reached up to the Tsar, he fell and fainted. Both the king and the hermit found out that the man had been deeply wounded and was profusely bleeding. They took the man inside the cottage and dressed his wound. The king also gave the man fresh water to drink. As the sun had already set, the Tsar decided to stay back at the hermit's cottage. He was extremely tired owing to his hard work and his effort to save the wounded man. He therefore fell fast asleep on the very threshold of the hut. He slept soundly, and the next morning as he woke up, he found that the injured man from the previous day was gazing at him with gratitude. The man asked for the forgiveness of the Tsar and thanked him for saving his life. The man then narrated the events of the previous day. He had followed the Tsar to the woods and was determined to avenge his brother's death, whose property had been seized by the king and who had been executed by the order of the king. He had waited in his hiding, and when the Tsar did not return, this man came out of his ambush to find and kill the king. But instead he came across the king's bodyguards, who recognized him and wounded him. The man had managed to flee from their clutches, but he would have died if the king had not bandaged his wounds. The man then pledged that if the Tsar forgives him, then he would always be the king's slave, and even his succeeding generations would serve him. The Tsar forgave the man and decided to restore his property. In addition to that, he also decided to send his own physician to attend him. Now it was time for the Tsar to set out for his palace. But before taking leave of the hermit, he once again insisted on getting the answers. This time the hermit surprised him. He told the king that he had already received his answers. Then he explained that if on the previous day the Tsar had not taken pity on the hermit and had not dug the soil bed for him, if he had left for the palace, then this old enemy of his, the bearded man, would have attacked him. The Tsar would not have got a chance to reconcile with his enemy. So, at first, the most important time for the Tsar was when he was preparing the soil on behalf of the hermit. The hermit was the most important person at that very moment, and doing good to the hermit was the king's purpose. Then the most important person for the Tsar was the wounded man, and the most important time was when he looked after him, and doing good to that person was the king's sole aim. Hence, the most important time for anybody is now, the present moment, for this is the time when we can actually decide our action, and that in turn decides our future. Henceforth, whenever mankind is looking for peace, success, and overall betterment of life, then he or she must focus on the present moment and work on it, for there lies the seed of all positive success. One has to move on patiently, keeping a benevolent purpose in mind, that is, to do good to others. And as it is said, what goes around comes around. A day will come that good deeds will reap good results. The story Three Questions therefore teaches us the power of patience, kindness, forgiveness, and the constant awareness. In order to make life worthwhile, it is necessary to let go of ego, pride, and all those emotions that hold us back from achieving a higher purpose. Character analysis. The Tsar. The character of the Tsar comes to us as someone who seeks knowledge. It is the king who wanted to improve his life and his ability to rule his kingdom better, and therefore he posed three questions. That is, what is the correct time for any activity, the right person with whom one should interact, and the right action that would bring ultimate good result in life. Having received no satisfactory answer, the Tsar decided to meet a hermit, a wise man who was known for his wisdom. Since the hermit met only simple folks, the Tsar put on simple dress and left his bodyguards behind before he approached the hermit. The king therefore let go of his ego and pride. He is thus a true seeker of knowledge and wisdom. The qualities projected by the Tsar are very much commendable. He is a kind man who offered to help the hermit with digging the soil. He also took care of the wounded man, and despite knowing the true identity of the man as his former enemy, he forgave him and restored his property. He repeatedly asked the questions to the hermit, and never for once we see the Tsar to be angry. He is respectful of the hermit. Hence, the Tsar is also a virtuous man whose actions are also lessons in themselves. The next important character is that of the hermit. The hermit is the wise man in the story Three Questions who guided the Tsar onto the right path. We see him to be a simple man who lives in the woods and does not come out of it to socialize with people. Moreover, he receives only common people. Hence, anyone who wants to meet the hermit will have to let go of his ego, pride, and luxury lifestyle and be modest. This is a lesson in itself. The Tsar, who is truly in need of the answers to these three questions, decides to shun his royal attire and privileges to meet the hermit. The hermit was busy doing his work of digging when the king approached him. The hermit is focused and patient. He takes time to answer the questions of the Tsar. He gives the Tsar a practical lesson which the Tsar found to be really effective. He teaches the Tsar that if a person focuses on the present moment, he or she can change his or her future for the better. By showing mercy to his former enemy, the Tsar changed his future. Therefore, by concentrating on the present moment, by dealing with the person right in front of us, and by doing good to that person, we can build a better and successful life for ourselves.